After General Langley's explosive attack, the world turned to its most influential voices. But one name remained silent: Cristiano Ronaldo. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, visibly shocked, continues to wait for the football legend's response. What does his silence mean? And why is this moment so important? Watch till the end. This isn't just about politics, it's about global influence and truth. It was a morning like no other in the capital of Burkina Faso. The streets of Ouagadougou, already bustling with life, carried a special kind of energy that day. News had begun to spread, whispers first, then loud conversations until it became a national chorus. Captain Ibrahim Traoré had received an extraordinary message from a figure admired across continents, Cristiano Ronaldo himself. At the International Cornell District Headquarters, a special meeting was convened. Only a few trusted advisors and dignitaries were present. The mood was one of quiet anticipation. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, usually so composed and unshakable, appeared visibly moved as he held a beautifully crafted letter embossed with the official seal of the Club Portugal. It wasn't just the words that mattered. It was the spirit behind them. In a world where political alliances often shifted like sand, the simple, heartfelt gesture from the Portuguese football legend resonated deeper than any official statement could. Cristiano Ronaldo, speaking not as a politician, but as a global citizen, had expressed his unwavering support for the people of Burkina Faso, recognizing their courage, their struggles, and their dreams. Diplomatic ties between Portugal and Burkina Faso had always been characterized by quiet respect and practical collaboration. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and humanitarian missions had built a bridge between the two nations, not a bridge made of grand political speeches, but one made of human connection and mutual admiration. Over the years, Portugal had contributed to educational initiatives, supported rural healthcare projects, and encouraged the exchange of knowledge in agriculture and renewable energy. These ties, though modest compared to larger powers, were genuine and meaningful. And now, through Cristiano Ronaldo's gesture, that bridge was illuminated for all to see. The letter, written in Portuguese and carefully translated into French for Captain Traoré, carried a message of hope and solidarity. Dear Captain Ibrahim Traoré, in times of hardship, true friendships reveal themselves. We at Club Portugal and I personally stand with you and your people. May you find strength in knowing that across oceans and borders your struggle is sane, your courage is admired, and your spirit is honored. This is not politics. This is humanity. With respect and admiration, Cristiano Ronaldo. Captain Traoré closed his eyes briefly after reading the message aloud. The room remained silent, the weight of the moment sinking deep into the hearts of all present. He looked up, his voice firm but filled with emotion. This, he said, raising the letter gently, is more than support. It is a reminder that we are not alone, that the world, even in its complexity, still holds spaces for compassion, for dignity, for human connection. But Captain Traoré also understood the delicate balance this support would require. The international community often scrutinized such gestures, especially when coming from figures of immense influence. Yet Cristiano Ronaldo had made it clear this was not a political statement. It was a call for empathy. Standing beside him, Minister of Foreign Affairs Issa Zerbo added thoughtfully, Portugal has always shown us quiet solidarity. This gesture reaffirms the friendship between our peoples. It opens the door to deeper cultural and humanitarian cooperation. Later that afternoon, Captain Traoré took a quiet moment to reflect in his private office. On his desk lay the letter alongside photographs of children from rural villages, soldiers rebuilding communities, and families displaced by conflict. In each image, he saw the faces of resilience, the very spirit Cristiano had spoken to. Meanwhile, Cristiano Ronaldo, far from the political storm, continued his training session with Club Portugal. When asked by reporters about his message, he simply smiled and said, "We are in the world of football, not in politics. But when people are suffering, humanity must always speak louder than silence. Many of our passionate fans come from lands, like Burkina Faso, They deserve to know that their struggles are not invisible. We see them. We honor them. He refused to elaborate further, keeping true to his word that this was not about headlines. It was about heartlines. As the sun set over Ouagadougou, casting a golden glow over the red earth, a new chapter quietly began. One where the strength of human kindness transcended borders, where a football legend became a bridge between two distant but kindred nations. And in the hearts of the people of Burkina Faso, hope found a new anthem carried not by political promises but by the genuine spirit of solidarity. The sun had barely risen over Ouagadougou when the halls of the assembly began to stir with unusual urgency. It was a morning like any other, or so it seemed, until a knock at the door of the Secretary General's office shattered the routine calm. A courier, breathless and wide-eyed, stood at the threshold, clutching an envelope marked with the official insignia of the Republic of Portugal. It was not just any message. It carried a diplomatic seal and with it an air of significance that demanded immediate attention. Secretary General Adama Bationo, a seasoned man with decades of political service behind him, knew better than to delay. He carefully opened the envelope and read the contents. His eyes widened slightly, a rare show of emotion for a man known for his stoic demeanor. It was a message from Cristiano Ronaldo himself, addressed ultimately to Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Without hesitation, Bationo summoned an emergency meeting of the Municipal Council. Within the hour, members of the council had gathered in a secured chamber, the atmosphere thick with curiosity and restrained excitement. They read the letter collectively, weighing every word, analyzing the diplomatic implications and considering the potential opportunities hidden within this unexpected gesture. The message spoke of solidarity, of collaboration, and of a shared vision for development. It was not merely symbolic. It contained proposals, ideas for educational programs, youth development initiatives, and even preliminary discussions about sports diplomacy projects that could bridge cultural divides. But as promising as the message was, there was an immediate problem. Captain Ibrahim Traoré was not available. Far from the corridors of government, Captain Traoré was on the front lines of crisis. The northern regions of Burkina Faso were under attack. Ruthless terrorist groups had launched coordinated assaults on villages, displacing families and threatening the fragile stability of the nation. Simultaneously, another wave of violence erupted in the west where strategic supply routes and farming communities were being targeted. Captain Traoré, ever the soldier before the politician, had taken personal command of the response. Helicopters had been dispatched, reinforcements rallied, and humanitarian corridors secured. His days and nights blurred into a continuous chain of operations, each decision carrying the weight of countless lives. In the command tent, surrounded by military advisors and maps dotted with red markers of conflict zones, Traoré's focus was absolute. News of the message from Portugal reached him briefly during a hurried strategy briefing. "Sir," said his chief of staff, cautiously approaching with a document in hand, "we have received a diplomatic message. It is unusual. It comes from Portugal, from Cristiano Ronaldo." Traoré barely glanced up from the satellite. Images spread before him. His mind was consumed by reports of villages burned, civilians fleeing, children missing. His voice, though calm, was resolute. "Tell the council to handle it for now," he said. "Our people need us more urgently than any letter. We will honor their support, but first we must protect our homeland." And so the message, though precious, was placed gently on the side, guarded carefully by the Secretary General and the Council. It was not forgotten, merely postponed, waiting for the right moment when the fires of war could be quelled and the spirit of hope could be properly welcomed. As the battles raged in the north and west, the promise contained in that letter became a quiet beacon, a reminder that even amidst chaos and violence, the world had not turned its back on Burkina Faso. In the days that followed, stories would emerge from the conflict zones, tales of bravery, of resilience, of communities refusing to fall to despair. Captain Traoré led not only with strategy, but with heart, earning the undying loyalty of his people. And in the quiet corners of the assembly, Secretary General Bationo and the council members continued to nurture the message from Portugal, preparing for the day when the captain would finally have the peace to read it properly, to respond not with haste, but with the full dignity and gratitude it deserved. For now the war demanded all his attention. But soon, very soon, there would be a time for diplomacy, for alliances, and for new beginnings. Days turned into a tense silence. At the headquarters of Club Portugal, and within diplomatic circles back in Lisbon, the anticipation grew heavy, almost unbearable. The initial message, filled with hope and friendship, had been sent with great care. It wasn't just a token gesture. Cristiano Ronaldo himself had signed it. The Portuguese officials, moved by the emotional weight of the moment, had attached real proposals, concrete ideas for educational programs, youth football initiatives, and collaborative humanitarian projects aimed at strengthening the ties between Portugal and Burkina Faso. Everything had been done correctly, diplomatically, and respectfully. All that was needed now was a simple response, but none came. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, though he had indeed received the message, had no choice but to postpone his reaction. The situation in his homeland had grown more severe by the hour. Reports of terror attacks flooded in from the northern and western regions. Entire villages had been displaced overnight. Fields were left burning. Families fled under the cover of darkness, seeking refuge where there was none. In the midst of this chaos, Traoré remained on the front lines. His attention could not waver. His orders were sharp, his days long, his nights restless. There was no room, not even a single minute, to sit at a desk and craft a diplomatic response, no matter how important it was. His heart bled for his people, and in those desperate hours, they were his sole priority. He spoke briefly to his advisors about the Portuguese message. "Tell them to wait," Traoré instructed, his voice calm but firm. "Our people bleed, our homes burn. I cannot offer gratitude while my country suffers. Let me end this darkness first, then I will speak." His advisors nodded solemnly. They knew the weight of his words. Yet miles away in Portugal, the lack of response was beginning to stir unease. At the Club Portugal headquarters, Cristiano Ronaldo, along with several club officials, gathered anxiously around a long conference table. The mood was heavy. Some began to whisper doubts. "Perhaps the captain did not appreciate our gesture," one counselor said hesitantly. "Maybe he thought we were meddling in his affairs," another added, concerned. It was an uncomfortable place for them. They had acted from the heart, not out of political ambition. Their love for the African continent, their recognition of its struggles and dreams, had moved them genuinely. Cristiano Ronaldo sat quietly at the head of the table, fingers steepled under his chin. His mind raced through possibilities. Had they miscalculated? Had they unintentionally caused offense? "We cannot judge yet," Cristiano finally said, his voice steady. "He is fighting a war for his people. We must respect that, but we must also stay prepared." Silence must not be mistaken for rejection. Still, unease persisted. Fans, too, were growing restless. Across social media, supporters from both Portugal and Burkina Faso speculated endlessly. Why hadn't Captain Traoré answered? Had the letter even reached him? Was he upset? Was he insulted? The Portuguese media, ever hungry for a headline, began to stir the pot. Articles questioned whether it was wise for Club Portugal to have gotten involved at all. Pundits debated heatedly on late-night television shows, painting pictures of diplomatic embarrassment. Behind closed doors, Club Portugal officials grew increasingly anxious. They feared that their goodwill would be misinterpreted as arrogance or worse, political interference. They had entered this with pure intentions, and now they stood on shaky ground. Yet the reality was far simpler and far heavier. Captain Traoré, standing in muddy boots in a northern village recently liberated from terrorist control, had other battles to fight. His uniform was stained with dust and sweat. His heart was heavy with the grief of the people he was sworn to protect. He carried a rifle, not a pen. When his advisors once again pressed him for a response, he answered with quiet determination. "Portugal has extended a hand of friendship. They deserve our gratitude. But I cannot turn to diplomacy while mothers are burying their children. I will answer them when peace allows me to speak with a full heart, not a divided one. And so the Portuguese waited, hearts heavy, hopes fragile, caught in the painful space between goodwill and uncertainty. Little did they know when Captain Traoré would finally answer, his words would not just meet their expectations, they would transcend them, forging a bond that no war, no misunderstanding could ever break. But for now, they could only wait, holding their breath against the winds of a distant storm. It was a morning unlike any other. The air in Ouagadougou carried a different kind of weight, not the heaviness of fear, but a strange, almost forgotten sensation, hope. Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood at the steps of the National Council building, breathing deeply. After weeks of relentless conflict, after countless sleepless nights, the major terrorist threats in the north and west had been neutralized. The fires had been extinguished, the skies had cleared, and a fragile calm was beginning to settle over the battered land. And now it was time. Today, Captain Traoré had resolved to address the matter he had set aside during the darkest days. The message from Portugal, the hand extended by strangers who had chosen not to look away. With deliberate steps, Traoré entered the council chamber where the nation's leaders and key advisors had gathered. They had been summoned early with little explanation, but they understood something important was about to happen. The captain took his seat at the head of the long mahogany table. His uniform, though clean, bore the wear of battle. His face was marked with lines etched by exhaustion, sorrow, and determination. A soft murmur swept the room as an aide approached carrying the message, the letter that had traveled across oceans and hearts to reach him. He unfolded it carefully and began to read aloud. It was not just a letter of support, it was a declaration of solidarity. "We will do everything in our power to assist you." It read, "If needed, one of our club members will come personally. Cristiano Ronaldo himself has volunteered to travel and meet you to offer our support face to face." The room fell silent. Captain Traoré lowered the letter, and for a long moment he said nothing. His heart was heavy, but this time, not with grief. It was overwhelmed by gratitude. For a people who had endured isolation, conflict, and pain, the idea that someone, not a politician, not a government, but a figure of global admiration, would step forward purely out of human compassion, was almost too much to comprehend. Slowly, Traoré stood up. He placed the letter gently on the table, before him. His voice when it came was rough but steady. "This," he said, "is a moment our nation will never forget." The hall erupted in applause. Ministers, military officers, civic leaders all rose to their feet, clapping not just for the contents of the letter, but for the spirit behind it, for the recognition that even amidst political complexities, human dignity still mattered. It was the first time in living memory that such an expression of solidarity had come from figures outside the rigid world of politics, from legends, from icons who had no obligation but chose to care anyway. As the applause faded, Traoré read another excerpt from the letter, one that struck deep into the soul of the room. "We are footballers, not politicians. But when a nation suffers, when lives are lost and dreams are threatened, we cannot turn away. We cannot close our eyes. We cannot silence our hearts. Every human life lost is not just a number. It is a person, a family, a future extinguished. When thousands suffer, millions feel the pain. Your voice matters. Your struggle matters. We stand with you." Captain Traoré's voice broke slightly as he read these lines. He paused, composing himself. For a man who had stared death and despair in the face, this gesture pierced through the armor he had built around himself. It reminded him and all who listened that even when the world seemed indifferent, there were still those who saw, who cared, who acted. The world watched in disbelief as U.S. General Michael Langley launched a verbal and political attack on Captain Ibrahim Traoré, an attack seen by many as a direct challenge to African sovereignty and a calculated attempt to destabilize a rising voice in the continent's leadership. Traoré, known for his calm defiance and unwavering resolve, held his composure in public. But behind the scenes, something deeply personal began to unfold, a silent wait for support, not from a fellow leader, but from someone the world least expected, Cristiano Ronaldo. Yes, the global football icon. It may seem unusual, a head of state looking toward an athlete. But in today's interconnected world where influence is no longer confined to parliaments or podiums, voices like Ronaldo's can spark awareness, shift opinions, and unite billions in a matter of seconds. Traoré has long admired Ronaldo, not just as a footballer, but as a figure who rose from humble beginnings, stood firm against criticism, and used his global platform to inspire millions. So when the attack happened and when silence followed from many corners, Traoré quietly hoped Ronaldo would speak. But the silence remained. For a man who's used to taking bullets, facing coups and standing alone, this silence hurt differently. Because this wasn't about politics, it was about human decency, about solidarity, about choosing to stand with the truth even if it's uncomfortable. Ronaldo, with more than 500 million followers, represents more than just sport. He represents power, presence, and visibility. A single word from him could shift the narrative, could show that Africa's pain matters, could prove that fame and values still walk hand in hand. And yet, nothing. In a closed interview, Traoré was asked about this. He simply said, "When a storm hits, you learn who runs and who stands with you. I still believe some voices are just late, not absent." His words were not bitter but honest. And that honesty has sparked a powerful conversation across social media. Fans worldwide are tagging Ronaldo, urging him to speak. African youth are asking a simple question: do you see us? This isn't about politics anymore, it's about presence. About knowing that in a world of noise, silence from the loudest can be the most deafening. Captain Ibrahim Traoré has shown the world what courage looks like in uniform. Now he waits, not for applause, but for acknowledgement. Not for defense, but for truth. Cristiano Ronaldo may still speak. And when he does, it might shift hearts. But until then, the world watches, because even the strongest leaders sometimes look for signs that they are not fighting alone. And sometimes, a single sentence from a global icon can do what armies cannot.